Pledge by Ms. Kelsey McGuire-Bruce.
Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize April as Autism Awareness Month. Autism touches many individuals and families in our community, reminding us that every person experiences the world in their own unique way. As a Board of Education, we are committed to supporting every student and ensuring all learners are valued and given the opportunity to succeed. Let us take a moment to reflect on the talents and contributions of individuals with autism and to reaffirm our dedication to inclusive and supportive learning environments in Enfield Public Schools. As disability advocate Carrie Margot reminds us, autism doesn't come with an instruction guide. It comes with a family who will never give up. Let us remind those families they are not alone, that they have a community, our educators and staff, and a Board of Education standing beside them. Please join me in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire-Bruce. Our fire evacuation announcement: in the unlikely event of an emergency, please exit through those back doors outside, or you can go out through these doors, down the steps, and out the back door. Roll call, Ms. Lawler.
Mrs. McGuire-Bruce?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Broculio?
Here.
Mrs. Cushman?
Here.
Mrs. Gerard?
Here.
Mr. Gauss?
Here.
Mrs. Kiner?
Here.
Mr. Kober?
Here.
Board Chair Pickett?
Here. All right, item 4A. Tonight's presentation is an introduction to our district's work around MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Personally, I see this as a starting point for building a shared understanding across our board. At its core, MTSS is how we organize academic, behavioral, and social emotional supports for all students and how we use data to guide those decisions. As a board, our role is to understand the structure of that system, how it's being implemented across the schools, and how it connects to our broader district goals and the investments that we make. I appreciate the work that's gone into this presentation. I look forward to building our continued understanding over time. I anticipate there'll be some future conversations. Steve, anything that you'd like to add before we welcome Ms. Michelle Middleton and Nick Flynn to the dais?
No, you keep taking all of my openings. So thank you to Nick and Michelle for coming on in and leading us through the presentation. And we're gonna turn it right over to them.
We'll turn it right on over. Good evening. Am I on? Yes, okay, good. So for the 24-25 school year, a district team was created. Their members are on the screen right there to look at the current systems we had in place for interventions and supports at the K-5 level and revise them into a multi-tiered system of supports. And the guidelines and procedures that resulted from this work were rolled out to all K-5 staff in August of 2025. And these are the guidelines that have been in place throughout all of this year. And you'll see we had administration, we had Julie Carroll was on with us, and John Daig and David White. So we were well represented. We feel that our district equity statement fits into this work because it's very important in the MTSS system to ensure that all students receive the supports they need to be successful and supported in their learning, and that fits right into our statement. So that's why we led with that. And actually, this first paragraph kind of mirrors what Mrs. McGuire-Bruce just said in her moment of silence about all of us wanting assistance and interventions so students can be successful. This is what the committee guided their work in. We made sure that we were looking at all different supports to make sure that students had the opportunity to succeed at their grade level. And as we've already mentioned, the multi-tiered system of supports is what MTSS stands for. And it's a broad, comprehensive framework. So it takes the work that we had been doing and the procedures and protocol, and it kind of brings them all together under one umbrella to address the whole child. So whereas SRBI used to be look at the academic, and then we had behavioral with PBIS and social emotional learning. Now that plus the attendance with the LEAP program, that all is in one big system. So you're looking at all aspects of the child when the teams are meeting to put the supports and interventions in place for them. And it's a nationally recognized framework. It's a continuum of evidence-based interventions. I already said the SRBI and PBIS models, and it integrates all the systems into one. So that's what the model is supposed to look like. It's proactive and preventative, so we use data to look at where the students are, to put the right interventions and supports in place to try to strengthen their skills and close the gaps so that we're working from where they are and bringing them to the grade level through what we can do for them. Research shows that it boosts academic achievement if you do it this way. It can reduce referrals, behavioral referrals, and special education placements. It can decrease disruptive behavior. It can improve school safety. It strengthens teacher climate and efficacy, and it enhances social skills and emotional regulation. As you'll see, one of the first things that we don't have on here, but one of the first things that we look at is the Tier 1 instruction, which is for all students. So strengthening that and then looking at the interventions for the students that need a little more support, bringing them up to the Tier 1. So I'm going to turn the rest over to Nick right now.
All right. So just clarifying a little bit, education loves its acronyms. So what this was more commonly referred to a few years ago was SRBI, or Scientifically Research-Based Interventions. And all of the items that fall within SRBI, none of that went away, but it instead has been a reshifted focus to, as Michelle said, the whole child. So under SRBI, you still had multiple tiers of supports. You had universal screens to identify students. You had progress monitoring, and then you also had teams that were designed to problem solve. But with MTSS, as you can see with the smaller embedded triangle there, all of those things are still occurring. But again, with an emphasis on the whole child, including stakeholders at multiple different levels in a model of distributed leadership. And also, as Ms. Middleton was sharing, an emphasis on differentiated core instruction and a continuum of supports. So I believe the board's heard a little bit about some teams, but families may recognize these names. So we want to speak a little bit to the various distributed leadership teams and channels that exist under MTSS. So our teams are comprised of stakeholders that are experts in these areas, and they play critical roles in the student's school day. And in many cases, team members may overlap. Just to give an example, a student may be struggling with academics, but then they may also be struggling with attendance, and you can't fix one without also addressing the other. And so you may have members overlapping. We have experienced teacher leaders on these teams, but they have some different names. So, and then to know an administrator is always a part of that team. So for academic, we have SAT, which is student assistant teams, most commonly used at the elementary level. And then we have SIT, or students intervention teams, which is more commonly used at the secondary level. For attendance, you've heard this acronym LEAP, Learner Engagement and Attendance Program. And then for our students who need behavior and social emotional support, we have BAT team, which is Behavior Assistance Teams. So when I talk about stakeholders at those teams having expertise, you might see, for example, a social worker or a school counselor at a behavior assistance team meeting. So we're going to get a little bit into the tiers and how data is used at each of the levels. If folks have done some research in this area, this triangle used to be divided just like cut into three parts. And the difference with this model is that the triangles are embedded into the larger triangle. And what that's meant to show is that Tier 1 is for all students, and all the other tiers are within Tier 1 and not in lieu of Tier 1. And so Tier 1 is comprised of our core curricula and instruction, which includes differentiation for all students. using best practices. And there's various assessments that we use at this level. So universal screens are brief assessments that are given to all students at set points in the year. Typically, it would be beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. They are used to identify students at risk for academic or behavioral difficulties. And risk refers to a set of criteria that the developer of that particular assessment has created. And then the district may develop their own cut points based on that risk, but that's what the term risk is meant to signify. And it helps schools make those early data-driven decisions about providing support and intervention to students. And then we have curriculum assessments. So these are aligned to our core ELA and our math curricula, and they assess mastery of the grade level standards. For Tier 2, Tier 2 interventions are in addition to the core academic instruction, or Tier 1, and they increase in intensity. So they're a more intensive support than what students would receive in Tier 1. And what this typically looks like is small group instruction, focusing on specific skills or learning strategies. So an example for behavior assistance team might be check-in, check-out. In the context of ELA, it can be guided reading comprehension or skill practice. And in the context of math, it could be small group instruction on making 10 within a 10 frame. In all tiers, there's progress monitoring, but more frequent in Tier 2. Our teachers are constantly collecting anecdotal data as well as raw data on how students are responding to the interventions over time, and using that data to make decisions on whether to make adjustments or continue. And the classroom teacher is the primary designer and implementer of our Tier 2 interventions. And then we have Tier 3. So Tier 3 is our most intensive tier. It's greater in intensity and frequency than Tier 2. So this is more individualized, and we strive for a smaller teacher-to-student ratio. And it might be for a physically longer time than Tier 2 or a longer duration of a cycle. There is more frequent progress monitoring, and those are also defined by some of the programs that we use in those tiers. The big emphasis is on evidence-based practices. So we want to make sure that what we're doing has been widely recognized by research and programs that have a high success rate with students. And then an important note too is that general education students, which includes students with IEPs, may receive Tier 3 services from any appropriate staff member best suited to provide the instruction. So that could be a language arts consultant, it might be a math interventionist, or another certified building staff member. So this chart shows the decision guidance of how students might move or exist in a tier. So one of the first things we do in a school year is administer a universal screen, and that goes to all students. The names of those screens for reading, they're Easy CBM, and for math, it's the iReady diagnostic. And then if we need more information, which we often do because the screens are very broad and they target broad skills. And so the purpose of additional screening and diagnostic assessments are to drill down to more specific gaps that a student might need. So we have a variety of different assessments that we use, to name a few: core phonics survey, supplemental assessments from our new reading program, phonological awareness screener test, Launcher's diagnostic assessment. Those are all just different screening and diagnostic assessments that are very skill specific. And in mathematics, we also use Forefront and AIMSweb MComp. When students flag as some risk after the universal screen is administered, they would be classified as Tier 2, and they would receive small group skill-based instruction with progress monitoring by the classroom teacher. And if students flag as high risk according to that assessment, as well as on the when they're given those additional assessments and they meet specific cut point criteria, they would be classified as tier 3, and they would start a 6-week intervention cycle. For reading, it would be with a certified reading specialist, and for math, it would be our math specialists. So we communicate with families along the way for this process. Once universal screens are administered, families of students who flag within those cut points receive notification from the school, and there are entry and exit letters from Tier 2 and Tier 3. Families will also receive progress reports from the teacher in charge of delivering an intervention. And families will be invited to participate in MTSS meetings when applicable. But our goal, as always, is to let families know as soon as possible when we sense that there's a need developing. So this is kind of arranged as like an if-then. So when kids are in that highest level of support, what might happen? So we could find that a student completes intervention and makes adequate progress, and the student is moved to a lesser intensity tier 2, which is our goal, right? We want it to be preventative. We want to address the need right away with a team of professionals and move students backwards in the tiers. So that's our best case scenario. It could also be, because every child is different and needs are very, complex, I would say. So we could begin an intervention cycle and find that the progress is not where we want it to be. It's insufficient. So the team will convene and have an SAT meeting. They will review the progress that the student has made. They'll make any revisions to the plan, and then they'll continue to provide support through an additional intervention cycle. And then, of course, sometimes this may happen where we've gone through some intervention cycles and a student demonstrates minimal progress. The team would want to meet again to look at any additional data or any additional information they may need, and then discuss a possible school-based referral for special education. But it's important to note that any staff member or family member may make a referral to special ed education at any point within this process. They don't have to wait till the end of this process. And ending on a positive note, but also a note on the continued work that we have, is our middle school update. So again, these do exist at the middle school level, but we've started with a revamp of our K-5, and we're extending that into middle school, and we've have some early accomplishments. We've added, as the board knows, additional staff members for math intervention, which is a great win to support our students. We've also tiered our reading courses, offering a tier 2 course, strategic reading, and a tier 3 course, assisted reading, which vary in intensity. We have universal screens that are administered up to 8th grade. And then we're taking our work on our MTSS guidelines handbook and expanding that across the grades. Our continued work is just really adjusting our process to what this looks like in a middle school level. So that might look like timelines that are, instead of a 6-week cycle, it may fall on a marking period instead, things like that. And then identifying the appropriate assessments that are appropriate for that age group. So still some work to do, but making the right moves. And that's it. Questions?
Perfect. Thank you both for that presentation. I will be opening it up for some questions. I'm sure there might be questions and considerations that we don't expect you to answer tonight. So similar to kind of how I started this, I will say to the board, you'll get an email from me that you can share some additional questions or considerations that come up. And I think there's going to be some future conversations in curriculum. So I don't want to put you on the spot with like asking you specific questions and feeling like you need to have those. So I just want to preface that. But I also want to encourage, if there are some thoughts, considerations that we have immediately, we're free to kind of open that up. Go ahead, Janet. Ms. Cushman.
That's fine. Thank you. I appreciate just the detail that you provided in this. I was curious, though, in terms of the universal screening that's done, like having the easy CBM and the iReady diagnostic to screen academically seems like it would be very objective. But when it comes to the more behavioral assessments, is there a way that that can truly be objective, or does that seem more subjective?
I think you're right. I think it's more subjective. It's based off of instances and things that have happened and referrals and things like that. We used to have Aperture a few years ago that was a screening tool. And we did find that we were not flagging many students that we weren't already aware of that needed, Kelsey's shaking it, yeah. We weren't finding many that we weren't already aware of that were in the system for, like, they were in a BAT team or they were already getting some supports from different members of the school staff. I would be willing to keep looking for something like that, but we haven't found a replacement for that yet. We did have that for a few years, though.
Okay.
I think part of what we do have are some of, like, the second step program and those things that they're teaching the lessons within the classroom. So part of what was happening with those screenings is, again, like the tier 2, they were doing like small group lessons on different skills for students that were having trouble with that. So keeping that going based off what we're seeing from the students in their areas of need would be helpful in keeping this. So we do have the tiered instruction that way, but you're right, we don't have a screen.
Okay, yeah, I was curious. And when it said, in terms that the classroom teacher is the primary designer of the tier 2, again, for like behavioral type of things.
That's more academic. The academic, so
okay.
the academic tier 2 and tier 3 was that chart.
Okay.
The behavior one goes more to the social worker might get involved, or the counselor at the building, different support staff, an assistant principal.
Okay.
Like, those people would be in charge of determining what the lessons and needs were of the kiddos.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Cushman. I will say I'm also interested to learn more about the behavioral side. I think screening is tough on behavior. I do see lots of districts. I think you talked about attendance and LEAP.
Yeah.
I think attendance, our discipline data, and then I think the work that we're doing around our school climate and restorative practices might be another way that we can continue to build and
Exactly.
Work on that. But I think that's it's a trickier, grayer land. But I think
grayer
some
land,
additional
right.
conversation around kind of what data are we collecting there, and how are we measuring not just student impact, but also like intervention impact, like how good is that intervention impacting students?
I would say that exact topic is your June 9th Board of Education update.
Woohoo.
So you're going to have, Michelle's coming back, but also with Julie Carroll and John Daig and our engagement that we added in for your reports to the board. That's going to be your first meeting in June.
Yes.
Thanks for that reminder, Steve. Ms. Kiner.
You said the same thing I was going to ask about. Oops. I was also on the same vein as Mrs. Pickett, wondering who are the professionals who are on that, what's it called, behavior assistant team?
Yes. Nick, do you want to talk about what it looked like when you were assistant principal?
Yeah, so assistant principals are typically in charge of discipline at the school level. So they would definitely be involved in BAT. And then, as I mentioned, a school social worker or counselor. Sometimes we have classroom teachers, maybe ones that aren't involved with the student, but just classroom teachers that want to be involved in behavior support. So essentially, we want to have as much of a variety of stakeholders as possible. But those are the primary folks that you might see at a behavior
So it's
assistance
basically
team.
the principal and the classroom teachers.
The assistant principal, teaching
principal.
staff, counseling staff, and then we
staff.
include the parents, obviously, as well, because they're integral parts of those teams.
Good. Thank you.
Ms. McGuire Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I also will note that I like that shift in that triangle from the levels to the all together. I like that. So you mentioned that students move obviously from tier 3, they can move to tier 2 after an intervention cycle. Can you clarify how many, I know it's different per student, but typically before you head to a SAT process, is there a standard for how many cycles approximately a student may sit in a tier 3 for before heading to SAT process? Is there any data collected on that?
I can't speak for exactly how many cycles because it's not just the number of cycles, it's the movement of the progress the student's making.
Okay.
So if they're making small incremental progress, they might do repeated cycles because they're moving forward.
Yep.
It's if they're not moving or they're moving down, it might be shorter cycles before you go to that process.
Yeah, that's more of my question.
Yeah.
So if they're not making progress within the tier 3 and they're staying in tier 3, at what point are you moving towards?
It's usually a school. It's the team gets together and talks about. They look at other aspects of it too. Was attendance impacting it?
Yep.
So if they're not in attendance and they're not getting all of their tier 3 intervention, it's kind of hard to judge whether or not. So there are a lot of things that go into it. So it's more of everybody looks at the data. They have discussions about what's going on with the child in the building. And then it's whether or not, are they seeing it in other classes?
Yeah.
Like,
so are
seeing
we
it all
keeping
day?
track of that, I guess, like at a district level or more school-based level?
School-based level.
Okay. And then just tier 2, in some districts, obviously this is a budgetary constraint, I just am bringing this up. In some districts, tier 2 interventions are supported through dedicated staff to provide the pull-out services rather than relying on teachers to provide that instruction. Have we explored a staffing model of what that might look like for potential futures? And then also more so, have we compared, if we have data on our movement through tiers, have we compared and looked at other districts who do have that pull-out of tier 2 model and what their fluctuation through the tiers look like, and if that's beneficial, what the impact could be on that? I don't need an answer on that right now. Just something I'm thinking about for the future, or even if it's not an option for us, but for us to know, like, is that working in other districts, and is that something we should have in the back of our minds as a potential option? So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire-Bruce. I also see this conversation continuing with some of the conversation around coaching. And so if tier 2 isn't embedded with the classroom teacher, I think you both asked a question on this now, thinking about how we're building that capacity with our staff in good tier 1 instruction, and what does differentiation in tier 2 intervention look like in the classroom. So
Yes.
perfect. Other questions, Mr. Kober, and then Ms. Bruculio.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So I appreciate you coming in and giving us a good overview. I think it's like a good baseline, and I hope we do have the continued conversations on it. Just a couple questions that kind of stood out. I know you guys talked about like the PBIS model and how that's kind of incorporated in MTSS. I don't know if you could just speak to, like, are we fully using PBIS? Like, I know like a lot of schools have like expectations, like what it means to be, XYZ at this school and that school. But do we use some of the other aspects, like maybe some of the incentivized behavioral?
The prizes type thing.
Exactly.
We don't rely on that piece of it. It's more of the expectations, and they do assemblies and they do certain celebrations and things like that, but it's not the, pencils or stuffies or
Not like the full praise and tokens that
Yes.
sometimes you see with those models.
Yes,
Where whether
yes.
it's attendance or behavior
There
or
was the
stuff.
bucket filling, which I think still happens. I know there are different things that students can. So classrooms work together to kind of get maybe a game time on Fridays or an extra recess or something.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
That
like some
type of
some
thing.
districts use like dojo points and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
none of that here. Awesome. All right. And then the only other question I had now, and I don't know if you obviously know right away, but just with the tiers, obviously you talk about the universal screening. You figure most of our population's in tier 1. Would you be able to like quantify like how percentage wise or like how many students we have in tier 2 and tier 3
At this
any given time?
point, it's difficult because until the end, like, I know where we started grade level wise in math and reading in the fall. And I know those tier 3 numbers have dropped in the winter. Sometimes you actually see the opposite happen, and it goes up a little bit in the winter because the norms change and some of the tests change, especially like the kindergarten kiddos. They get added tests and some get dropped. And then in the spring, so I know that I've already talked to Mrs. Pickett, and we'll be giving that data probably in June. I don't think I'll even have it for the May 21st curriculum meeting, but I will have it for I think it's June 18th. I will be able to do the beginning of the year to the end of the year, looking at where the kids were, tier 1, tier 2,
Okay.
tier 3, by grade level on those 2 assessments.
Yeah. All right. No, that's
We are looking at the data constantly, so I do know. And we had to report it as an Alliance district. We had a mid-year meeting, and all that data was put on our district tracking sheet and met with our representative. And the schools also come in the fall, and then the winter, and then the summer. Can't call it spring anymore. And they do their student achievement meetings where they compare that data between schools and grade levels. And we talk about, which schools did better on what scale and why, and we have those conversations about next steps.
okay. Outstanding. All right. I look forward to the June presentation.
You got it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Kober. You're having me think about our conversation around EduClimber too. So my guess is that's
yes.
all super connected.
It is super good. Actually, we had EduClimber issues this year. The next big John Digg powerful move is turning all of these sheets, the student assistant team, the progress monitoring, all of that behavior, all of that into electronically done through EduClimber, where all of the kiddos' stuff will pop up. You don't have to do searching for all of the data before the meeting. So we've actually, he and I just talked about that last week. We were looking at which like Easy CBM will be able to like link right in, and so will iReady, and it'll be very good for us. Nick and I were just talking about the HMH data and how to get that in there. So
Perfect. It's continuous improvement. So
yes,
appreciate the efforts that you're
now
doing.
we know what to look out for. So we're going to work on that.
Perfect. Ms. Berculio.
I really appreciate the focus on building a system of supports for all students, and I know this is only the beginning of our MTSS journey. As mentioned by the Vice Chair, I especially appreciate the visual of the embedded tiers, specifically because I think there is often this misconception of what Tier 2 and Tier 3 students are capable of that this image subtly addresses. I do have a few questions and considerations as I think about like what this actually looks like in practice. And I just wanted to reiterate, I'm not expecting answers right now, but maybe at a future curriculum meeting. My first question, I think, will be addressed June 9th, so I'll skip that one. I'm interested in how students are being distributed across tiers, if we could get some data on that. I think some things to consider are there identifiable patterns in student placement, particularly among some of our subgroups? For example, are certain populations overrepresented or underrepresented in Tier 2 or Tier 3? And how are we monitoring that to ensure equitable access and identification? This is more of a systems and procedures question, just from lived experience, but I'm also curious about systems for student mobility. Is there a clear process in place for students who enter mid or late year to ensure that they not only have access to timely MTSS, but also the universal screeners? I know sometimes if a student comes late in the year, they fall through the cracks. So just, again, something to think about. Another area I'd like to raise is support for MLLs, multi-language learners. I'm really curious about how MTSS intersects with MLL services. I know, again, just from lived experience, there can sometimes be a tendency to attribute learning challenges only to language acquisition, and then later on in their career, that can delay referrals for eval. So I have some wonderings around that. And then lastly, I am just curious to know more about the structures that make MTSS possible. I do worry about capacity, especially with teachers being responsible for Tier 2. For example, I'm just wondering what happens when one teacher has, according to the iReady assessment, 12 students that are flagged for, say, math, but then, their counterpart in the same grade level only has 2 students. So what does that look like? I know that was a lot.
No problem. Leslie's taking notes for me. I already asked her.
Perfect. We will get them to you in a nice, clean version as well. Thank you, Ms. Berculio, for your thoughtful considerations. Mr. Gauss.
Thank you. And I actually have questions that Mr. Kober and Ms. Brulio, I'm sorry, kind of alluded to. And the first one, I'm going to go backward, is a question of are we also learning from this process and adjusting? Let's say we have what seems like a very large amount of Tier to developing, are we taking into account how we're getting there and maybe adjusting to prevent that from happening in the first place? That's one, and I'm not obviously looking for a huge answer right now.
Yes, I mean, and I can speak for tier 3. Like I'll use tier 3 as an example because it's a little bit easier. But we look at the numbers in the buildings, and if we have to move, if one building has less, another building has more, we have moved a 0.5 math consultant, a 0.5 language arts consultant to be split between 2 buildings to pick up what another building can't handle. So all kids are getting exactly what they need in tier 3. Tier 2 is a little bit different because it's more skill based. So it might not be the same group of kids for, it's not a 6-week cycle. So a student, it might be, 8 kids on this one skill, and then a couple weeks later you're down to 4, and then a couple weeks later you're up to 10. So it's a little bit different. And then also we have to look at if it's the same kiddos that are always in tier 2, are they dropping and are they going to enter tier 3, which is a possibility that we didn't even talk about. So yes, we are looking at those numbers.
Yeah, my concern is that if we're finding something is, I don't know, environmentally or whatever is happening that's causing more kids to fall behind, are we adjusting our procedures to keep them up? Is
Yes.
really my question.
We actually break it down and look at, we also look, when we look at the data, we look at it sometimes by building, by grade level, by skill. And then if we see if there's like an outlier, Nick has gone in and Chris Ponte has gone in and worked with individual teachers on looking at the small group instruction and trying to figure out, what the kiddos need, why that one skill flagged for that one classroom, that type of thing. So those conversations are happening. Yes.
And then the same question with is there, as we do these things, is there a demographic like to find the most simple one I can, boys versus girls? Is there maybe boys are having a harder time with this, girls are having a harder time with that, and we start before we get to that point?
That we would have to look a little deeper into. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I'm just using those
but
two,
I know,
but
yeah.
it could be based on other factors, like you brought up, attendance,
Right.
kids with attendance versus kids, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Our EduClimber, I believe, will help us with disaggregated data in a much more efficient manner. So it'll be more at a click of a button and accessible. And then just to emphasize, too, the importance of a strong Tier 1 instruction and really looking at how students are responding to, yes, our universal screens, but also our curriculum assessments. So with the launch of we're now finishing year 2, we can no longer call it new curriculum, but our Tier 1 instruction and making sure that kids are responding well to that so that all the tiers are working in coherence with one another.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gauss, you raise a good point, too, about how we look at the data to identify our maybe system structures, practices that we can adjust. And I'm going to use attendance as an example. I do know of some districts who are looking at, and I think of work that we're even doing, walkers are more chronically absent. So how do we adjust policy or procedures around access to school to impact attendance, which is something we adjust. It's not an intervention for the student. It's adjustment in our practices. So I think that's a really good point that you know. Any other questions? Mr. Anderson.
Just real quick, not really a question, but a comment. I hope after all this, Amanda, you can finally start really accepting multi-tiered systems of support. I know you've been kind of against that lately, so.
I'm not against
I know.
That's my favorite word.
I know.
I've been asking for it for a long time. It's my
Mr.
favorite
Anderson's
word there.
making funnies tonight.
Yes. We got jokes. That's all good. No, I thank you for that reminder, Mr. Anderson. I think as a parent, I came and spoke about MTSS way before I ever joined the board, and talked about how we were supporting students through intervention and using data. So it is nice to have this presentation. Is there any other comments? Then I will wrap us up. One is I was excited to see our MTSS teams and some of the interventions in the areas. I do think that is an opportune time to look at how robust are our interventions. Like LEAP, for example, is a great high need tier 3 intervention.
Tier 2.
But it's truly, but it's a home-based, it's an individual-based intervention. So a lot of resources it takes to do that. So kind of what robust interventions do we have? I also think I love the work that you're doing with partnering with families and notifying them around tier 2 and tier 3. I also think this presentation could be a great clip for just families to know in general. So before my kid might be ever flagged for a tier 2 intervention, I know about MTSS as a parent, and that it's I don't want to say normalized, but it is. We all need additional support in different things. And just because somebody might need tier 2 math intervention doesn't mean that they're not the high flyer in reading. So thinking about how we provide differentiated supports to students. I'm also interested to continue learning about how this looks at our secondary level. I know it's trickier, it's different, but thinking about what structures are needed to implement MTSS. So our schedule, is it intervention blocks? Is it advisory? How do we do this work? And how do we support this work through those things? The other thing that I think of us as a board, as we continue this work, having continued conversations in curriculum, thinking about how this aligns to our district strategic plan, I think this is all in it. So thinking about how we review that data, how we look at our budget investments and the impact that it's having. But this was great groundwork and beginning information for us to start with. Please, thank you so much for your thoughtful presentation and sharing this information. Board members, if you have additional thoughts, questions, or considerations, please don't hesitate to email them to me and we will continue the conversation in curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move to item 4B. This is a yearly thing we do for Head Start.
Yeah, we're going to have Jacqueline Valley Early Childhood Initiatives Director come on up.
So what I love about Head Start is there are clear policies and procedures that run Head Start's work. So tonight, Ms. Jacqueline
Very
Valley,
clearly delineated policies and
Very
procedures.
you will share the Head Start self-assessment plan.
Yes.
You will come back at another date to share the results and information and plan that we create from this plan.
Correct.
Beautiful.
And
So
the reason I have to share this is it's written in one of the Head Start standards that we communicate the self-assessment plan to our policy committee, our governing board, bless you, whoever, oh, sorry, bless, and our families. And so I'm just here to communicate the plan.
thank you for being here. Thank you for your thoughtful and inclusive plan that you're going to be sharing with us, and excited to hear next steps.
Okay, so we are preparing for our annual Head Start self-assessment, which is something that occurs annually by standard. Every 5 years, we have to do a full community assessment, as well as an update annually, but this is a self-assessment that feeds into that community assessment and vice versa. They work off each other, but the self-assessment works with our internal self-monitoring process where we look at our data, we're trying to identify strengths, we're monitoring our goals and objectives all year long. And for this process, we identify areas that we really want to focus on with stakeholders. So we do it for continuous improvement. Again, it's an annual process. It ensures that we continue to serve the community and our own program in the ways that we have learned through looking at data and having conversations. That link is live if you really want to read the specific standard. So who's involved? Our leadership team that includes all of the managers, the health manager, the family support manager, the education and disabilities manager. We have families that come. So families serve on our policy committee, but additionally there are families that are invited to participate in this annual process. They provide a different perspective, and of course it's their program, so we want to make sure their voice is there. Preschool staff, I don't always say teacher or manager because it could be a teacher assistant, paraprofessional. This year we have a behavior tech coming for a unique perspective around trauma-informed restorative practices, which is one of our big focuses this year. We have community partners, our policy committee members, Board of Education representation, so Bobby will be there as our liaison, district level staff, and then I say PK students as appropriate because we try and include student voice. So in the past we've used surveys to identify how kids were feeling about the meals that they were receiving at school. This year we are going to be using a student survey and some little anecdotal clips, if you will, from them around how they're feeling at school in terms of culture and climate to feed into our restorative practices work. So the plan is just early March, we prepare, so we review data, we identify focus areas, we summarize data and obtain approvals. April is the design process, so our team gets together, we identify participants, we send out invites, select the location. That is an important part if you have been to Stowe, figuring out where to put everybody. So this year, May 14th, we will analyze, dialogue, and recommend. So there will be data up on the walls. Data will be shared with the team ahead of time. We will celebrate strengths, look for systemic issues, do gallery walks to analyze the data. There'll be specific questions for participants to ask and answer and discuss together. We'll check in on the progress on our goals and objectives, identify opportunities, and make final recommendations. We also ask participants to complete an exit slip on the process. So if the timing of the meeting didn't feel right, or the volume in the room, or the way the data was presented didn't work, we can make adjustments on our end. And then I will spend a very short amount of time preparing the report because it's very quick. And I will be back to share that program improvement plan with you. And then you might give feedback, families will give feedback, staff. We will look at revising the goals and then communicating that final plan that will start next school year. And then it sits in a file until we submit our grant. And some years they want it submitted with the grant and sometimes they don't. We always submit it anyways because they always ask for it. And before questions, real quick, the other focus area that we will do is around family literacy. We do a lot of work around engaging families in literacy, but we don't have a specific promise or pledge or procedure, if you will, that's written in our handbook. And as a recipient of Early Start funds, we did have a monitoring visit, and they asked a question around, can you share an example of a family literacy activity? And we, of course, had a flyer from an event, but that felt really incomplete in terms of all the work that we do. So we want to have everyone in the room sort of support, like, what does Stowe believe about family literacy and engaging families, but with the family perspective in there. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Jacqueline Valley. I will say I have participated in the self-assessment for many years. I think that the model is something that we could use across the district and even us board. I've been thinking about a board retreat for some time, and I'm like, the way of like how you give data to review beforehand, the very thoughtful activities that you get reflection on, how you gather that feedback. It's a very thoughtful process. So I just want to say that I'm excited and I appreciate the work that you and the Head Start committees do to kind of get this work moving. Any questions, comments from board members? Ms. McGuire-Bruce.
Mine's quick. I love this structure. I'm sure it's a lot of work because Head Start has the specifics you need, but I just think the structure goes a long way. And I was just curious, as a new board member, is there somewhere to see the past examples of the different plans that you had? So just out of pure curiosity from my own learning.
Yes, I can certainly share them. And
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
I will send them to superintendent.
We'll get them.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kober.
All right, thank you, Director Bailey. I like that it was kind of brief and to the point, so I'm all for that. And I know you kind of touched on some of the focus areas, and obviously, like we said, this is an annual thing. But just to confirm, because like on one of the slides you had, obviously like May 14th seems like the big date, but you had stuff identified for March and April, and you kind of indicated that you were doing that. But I guess just to confirm, like, has that preparation and design process been done, or is that kind of like still, you're hoping to get that done before May 14th? Because we're obviously at the end of April.
Yes,
so.
and we were coming in March for approval. So we got approval from the policy committee in March, and we've identified, we have a bulk of our data. We're ready to put some things up on the walls, but we're just trying to finalize some of our survey data from families around family literacy, from the kiddos around their experience at school, because we're focusing on those two areas. So it will be done.
Okay, outstanding. And
It's like 75% there.
okay, and I figured, and obviously maybe we had planned it for earlier and we had missed earlier April meeting, so maybe that pushed it off. And then I know you mentioned obviously like some of the stakeholders and identifying participants and obviously like space constraints and stuff. So normally, and maybe we could just speak historically, like how many people do you normally have in the team? Is it like a dozen? Do you have
So we
more
have
or
had
less?
40 people before,
Oh,
which
wow.
was a huge one. You were there, right? It was in, we had portable classrooms, if you remember those. The volume was very loud, but it just depends. So we have a lot of community partners, and our 5-year grant is really focused on increasing those partnerships. So we have representation from the Connecticut Dental Health Partnership, so our partners from their we have residents from CCMC who are also our partners. We have KITE, the FRC, representatives from the town side, the Board of Ed, district leaders, staff, families. So it kind of adds up. And then depending on what the focus areas are, you may have more people in that area. So 2 years ago, we focused on nutrition, so we had a lot of support from the area of nutrition to support a better menu for the kiddos. So it just depends on the year, but we can do it with 10 but we can go up to as many as we need.
Okay, awesome, great. And I guess my last inquiry then is, I know obviously because we're like a partner with Manchester through Head Start, so like where are they involved in the process? Are you going to finalize it and then it goes through them up to the
Yes,
federal
everything
level?
goes through Manchester. So Cynthia, their director, and I work very closely together. I attend their policy council meetings. She attends our policy committee meetings. So she was present for the approval of this at our last policy committee meeting, and I was at her policy council meeting when she approved hers, and then we'll both attend each other's. We're also bringing our health manager to Manchester because their focus this year is on health.
All right, great, awesome. Thank you very much for coming in. I look forward to as we see more with the full plan.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kober. Any other questions? All right. I'm going to ask for a motion to move item A8B to 4C, so we can do a discussion and action regarding the self-assessment plan.
I make a motion to move 8B, discussion and action regarding Head Start self-assessment plan, up to 4C.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McGuire-Bruce, seconded by Ms. Gerard. Any discussion on that? Hand vote on moving that. All in favor? I'm getting better at this. 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions. All right, so let's move on to that. Discussion and action regarding Head Start self-assessment plan. Do I have a motion to approve the Head Start self-assessment plan?
Motion to approve the Head Start self-assessment plan.
Second.
Moved by Ms. McGuire-Bruce, seconded by Ms. Gerard. Any discussion? Mr. Kober?
I think we just had a great presentation on that. We had a chance to ask questions. It's all fresh in our mind. And we kind of went over the steps, and I look forward to when we get the future presentations with the focus areas and the goals and so forth. So looking forward to it.
Perfect comments, Mr. Kober. I will move us then to a roll call vote.
Mrs. McGuire-Bruce.
4.
Mr. Anderson.
4.
Ms. Broculio.
4.
Mrs. Cushman.
4.
Mrs. Gerard.
4.
Mr. Gauss.
Yes.
Mrs. Kiner.
4.
Mr. Kober.
Yes.
Board Chair Pickett.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That's okay. You're good. You're good. Thank you, Ms. Valley, and I'm excited for, again, that continued information. All right, let's move on to our student rep update under our superintendent's report. Start with the senior.
Hi everyone, good evening. So it's been a while since we met, so good amount. Teacher Appreciation Week is going to be coming up next week, so we'll be celebrating them for all their hard work and dedication to the students. We have a couple things going on at the high school. Before break, there was a senior assembly and there were packets sent out regarding information for the upcoming senior events like prom, class night, the senior trip, and graduation. So for all you seniors out there, you can pay for those events in Parent Square, but you can also pay them in your dean's office. And also senior dues are still available to pay now in Parent Square. This is a little bit in the future, but the awards and scholarships night will be coming up on June 3rd. So anyone receiving an award or scholarship will be notified ahead of time on that subject. There still are a couple more scholarships available in the guidance office that are due in a couple of days. So be sure to check and make sure you aren't eligible for any of those, and if you are, make sure you do them. And finally, AP exams are starting on May 4th and will continue to the 15th, so good luck to all those AP students, and be sure to begin studying as soon as possible.
Thank you. I would add, because I was supposed to ask you before the meeting and I forgot, we've also been getting a lot of information from Bub's robotics team and all of the great work that's happening on that team in the high school, so I just want to acknowledge that. And you mentioned scholarships. Any seniors or even past students that has graduated from EPS and are aspiring educators, there is a scholarship program which provides up to $10,000 annually to students who are going into the education field. So I think that is one that is sometimes underutilized. That's important to know. Thank you.
Hi guys. We hosted junior planning night on the 22nd and tech and trades night on the 29th to help students and families prepare for their post-secondary pathways. And we also had an arts festival over this past weekend, and there was so much creativity and talent that was showcased, and I went and oh my God, I think everyone did a great job. Everything looked amazing. And we also had Freaky Friday by the Lamplayers on the 10th and 11th, and it was also a huge success and amazingly done. And we're looking forward to welcoming the 8th graders on the 30th to help acclimate them to their transition to high school. Furthermore, juniors recently completed SATs, but it had very high attendance, and now we're preparing for AP exams, as Olivia mentioned. And finally, we have a couple exciting upcoming events and recent activities, including Unified Sports and Sound event on May 9th, and a band and chorus field trip to Boston that happened over this past weekend, and I heard it was very fun.
Thank you, students, for keeping us all updated. The Arts Festival, I missed it this year, but is always like my favorite. So thank you for highlighting that as well. Steve, off to you.
Okay. I was going to congratulate everybody within the Art and Music Department regarding the 60th Arts Festival. And Avery, I would agree with you. I went on Friday evening with Mrs. Middleton just before it began, and we started at 6:15. I couldn't see everything in literally an hour. And we looked at everything, and by the time I was leaving at 7:15, you literally couldn't walk around the cafeteria. So phenomenal turnout, wonderful, wonderful event, and just makes me feel even less artistic than I am. So congratulations to them. Let's start off with final stretch. Needless to say, this is the final stretch. We're after April vacation. Ms. McGuire, Bruce, how many school days left? I know you know.
37, I think, for me.
For you. Okay, well, we only have 33. And Olivia, you don't even have 33, do you? No, you're actually under 30. So final stretch, only 33 school days left, starting with tomorrow. Reminder for everybody, graduation's on June 11th, starting at 7 p.m. I did distribute to you your very bright parking tickets and reserve parking pieces, and as well as your invitation. There's wristbands and things like that in there. Please take a chance and go through and take a look at it. Last day is the 16th, and just a reminder for the general public, 15th and 16th is still an early release day. You did hear about SAT, you heard about AP testing. 'Tis the season for standardized tests, unfortunately. It is a reality of the game that we play here in the state, and what I can let you know is that the middle school is done with their standardized testing for the year. They're doing makeups right now, just really trying to work on their attendance percentages related to the tests being taken. Intermediate school started with NGSS today. I went through and did some school visits, and you can't get down that wing because that's where the kids are doing their testing. So they're starting with their science testing today and tomorrow. They'll move into reading for next week, and then they'll go into math for the week after that. Grade 11 still does have some standardized testing to go. They have the end. Yeah, Avery's like, yeah, I know. They have their science test that they need to take. That's actually not going to be for a number of weeks still. They actually wait until after the AP tests. There's so much testing going on, so the NGSS for the grade 11 won't happen until the 18th through the 22nd of May. And then as soon as they're done, all of it's done. So that's with that. Athletics, I know you saw I hope you saw within my weekly update, but I did want to give a shout out and a large congratulations to Enfield High School's head ice hockey coach, Frank Genovese. He was named the Connecticut High School Coaches Association Ice Hockey Coach of the Year. While we didn't win the overall big state tournament, still a huge congratulations to him. Wonderful work by him. A little bit of an update on the annex in terms of the track. I'm going to strongly suggest that folks tune in to the town council meeting next week. I know there's been a lot of discussion within deliberations related to the annex track and the turf. So you're going to want to watch that town council meeting. My understanding is they're going to have some further conversation at the town council related to that. As I put into my weekly update, we were alerted of the potential for the track to be closed at the end of March. We were able to push it off until at least spring break. The thought was pushing it off that far would allow us some time to come up with somewhat of a plan, but also allowing them time over spring break to be able to dual utilize, if you will, the high school track. But now we're back from spring break. The work associated with that has not affected any of their track meets. So they had a certain number of track meets that were scheduled at JFK. Those same number of meets are still scheduled. We still do have a home meet. It's scheduled for May 6th. We actually had to do a little bit of a shift because the school district that we were supposed to be competing against canceled for whatever reason, so Mr. O'Connell went out and found us a replacement. So we still do have that meet. Right now, they are practicing at JFK. That is in alignment with some of the other folks that we've been reaching out to. I did reach out to the Crec School on Enfield Street. They have a meet every single Tuesday, and none of their meets are at home. So I was like, hey, perfect opportunity. No, they have other Crec schools that go in and utilize the track at that time. So we weren't even able to do a partnership with them. But I did reach out and ask. So that work is still going, but again, in speaking with Mr. Koppler, there seems like there's going to be some more conversation related to this. So stand by, and hopefully we'll have that information. Legislatively, I've been spending a lot of time trying to keep up with the legislative updates. 6, 7, 8, 9 amendments coming in at a time. So let's start off with the kindergarten waiver. We know that that one is passed. This is the last year for the waiver to occur for next year's students entering kindergarten. The window closed on April 13th. 2 of the 3 schools have finished their testing or reviewing of those requests. We do have 1 school that still, they should be done by the end of the week. So all of those parents will be notified whether or not they were approved for kindergarten. We received, I would say between, I don't want to give you the solid number. It was somewhere between 30 and 40 overall waiver requests. Of those requests, after the students came in and met with the principals and went through the testing, I can confidently say there was at least a handful that were approved to go into kindergarten. The rest didn't meet the criteria that was set up, so they will be starting with their the normal age cutoff range, which would be the following year. Big news coming out of the Capitol is cell phones will be banned in the future. This will be a state law related to it. The very last line of that state legislation also says that there is no financial impact on districts to have a cell phone ban, which is true if you don't buy yonder pouches. So we will, as a board, just through the policy committee, have to do some work related to that policy in terms of how we're going to go about, or how we're going to write our wording on it, because the way the legislation is actually looking right now is, in quotes, that the cell phones need to be, quote, stored in the manner as prescribed by the Board of Education. So we're going to have a lot of conversation, I'm sure. Okay, so that's going to happen at the policy level. The homeschooling, in terms of there will be a new form. It's going to be called the Intent to Educate form. That's supposed to begin for the 28-29 school year, and then we'll require parents to complete that every year moving forward after that. So there's a lot of logistics to work out with that one because of the back and forth that we're going to need to have with DCF should that go through fully and occur. And lastly, actually, as I was doing final preparations for this meeting, I received a notification from the State Department of Education, and if you watch the news, you probably saw it come out. There will be some additional funding being sent to towns across the state. So I believe there was originally supposed to be a tax credit rebate that was going to be given. That's no longer going to happen. And Governor Lamont plans to shift $100 million in municipal aid out of the state's affordability fund, as well as $170 million in school funding back to the municipalities. So about $270 million is planned to be distributed back to the towns for both educational purposes as well as municipal aid. I did reach out to Mr. Koppler just to let him know, because as soon as it came across my desk, I wanted him to be aware, because I know they're in the middle of budget deliberations. So just to give him a heads up that he does have some additional revenue coming. Because again, how it's going to look, how they're going to do it, I know I've updated you in the past about, is it going to go through ECS? Is it going to be foundational level increase? I don't have that detail yet, because the governor's just committing to the 270 officially through press release. So we'll see the logistics of how it's going to happen. But that's good news for us, because obviously any additional revenue that the town can receive takes some of the burden off of the taxpayers. So tomorrow night, the budget continues to be deliberated. I believe it's tomorrow night. Yes, it is tomorrow night because we have curriculum at 5, I have pre-referendum at 6, and budget deliberations at 6. I did let Mr. Koppler know that I will be in the same building as him, so should we have any education-related questions, shoot me a text. I'll come on. I think we're here, and I would have to go down to him. So that is your overall update. I think that's what I have for you right now. That's the big things that are happening.
Thank you, Steve. And actually, as you're reporting, especially on legislation, I think it's a hard thing to report on because the bills adjust. You mentioned amendments. I'm wondering, maybe for a future leadership conversation, we talk about as an official update in maybe June or July or August meeting, kind of reviewing the legislation that's passed and the impact that it has on us. I appreciate that you've been doing that through this process.
Yeah, we'll have a very large report. It usually takes, believe it or not, they'll close legislation next week. It will take a month or so, or maybe a month and a half before I'll get the update from both the State Department of Education as well as Shipman and Goodwin. But I'm more than happy to give you the full update. It will be a long report.
Thank you. Yeah, light reading. Any questions or considerations from Steve's report? Mr. Anderson?
Can we get an update on the status of all of the fields on the school grounds? I know there's an issue with Fermi, but the fields that are Enfield High, the fields at the elementary schools, are there any concerns with any of those?
I think the other major concern that was brought forward was the baseball field over at Powder Hollow for the high school, and my understanding is that baseball field's in full use right now. I believe there's still some of the dugout work and things like that needs to be completed, but the team is actually utilizing the field at this point. Porta potties was a big conversation topic. Those were all delivered to all of the different places throughout the town. And Mr. O'Connell has sort of put together a list of fall, winter, and spring start dates and everything that needs to occur, as well as the date that he's going to provide notification to the town. So that way they have months in advance so that hopefully we won't have these types of things occur again.
All right. And I don't know everything going on with the track at Fermi, but it's my understanding that the town is supposed to be taking care of all of the upkeep and maintenance with the grounds. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem to be happening.
The track and turf at Fermi, I think, has for multiple years been an issue. Due to whatever reason. Well before my time, whether the maintenance program wasn't fully implemented or whatnot, I don't know. I can't speak to it. I know what has occurred with the track portion is they've pulled the rubberized track surface up because there were so many divots and holes in it that it was literally a large liability that was going to occur. The turf itself, you can update the turf by putting rubberized pellets and things of that nature onto it, but I think that's happened so much that the turf is now just worn out. So they're looking at I want to say next Monday they're talking about full replacement of the turf and handling the track situation. So it's a town council is going to need to appropriate a significant amount of money to have that replaced. Because there are, as you saw at the public hearing, there's a number of recreational groups that use it, as well as we use it for JFK. Yeah, it's a highly used area.
And going back a couple of years, there was a lot of problems with the Enfield High Field.
The water drainage system.
Water drainage system and all that.
Seems to be working well. Yeah, I haven't heard of any issues related to water drainage at the bottom of the field over at the high school.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Anderson, thank you for those follow-up questions. One is that I want to highlight is I appreciate our staff's partnership and forethought of outlining what do we need for fields and a timeline for that. The other piece is I know our Joint Facilities Committee has adjusted to be mainly roofs, but I'm going to look to Ms. McGuire Bruce to maybe give a little update on what's happening in DPW. And I would just share with you that if you have specific questions or things that you would like to be talked about with our school facilities, please share those questions and concerns with me so we can make sure they get addressed through the DPW subcommittee.
Sorry, I had one more item for an update under athletics. Mr. O'Connell wanted me to make sure that everybody knew that the Enfield High School baseball team will be playing East Catholic at Duncan Park next Thursday, May 7th at 6:30. So they're going to be sort of like their own little minor league team down there. So go out and see them. Duncan Park is a great place to watch a game.
It's always cool playing at a place.
Perfect. Time?
6:30.
Thank you. All right. We will move on to public comment. My same spiel. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. A few reminders before we begin public comment. Each speaker will have 4 minutes. Please share your name and relationship to the district. This time's for your comments. It's not a conversation or Q&A with the board. Our role is governance of the district, so please frame your remarks accordingly. Please remember that all comments become part of public record, so please keep with our board policy and state law and ask that you avoid sharing information that's confidential, including personally identifiable student information or specific personnel matters. So we appreciate respectful decorum and fair treatment of our community. So my guess, Maureen. We'll start with you, Ms. Griffin.
Maureen Griffin, Abbey Road, parent. First couple of things are tangentially related to you guys. Well, the first one really. Safe Grad. The packets for the seniors were just delivered to the high school, to the senior office. They can be obtained either in the entryway tomorrow, and then any day after that, the secretary's office for the seniors. And doesn't matter if you're 18 or over, you still need your parents' signature and permissions, parent or guardian, on all the permissions for the paperwork. The entire packet needs to be returned because there's a ton of paperwork that needs to be sorted to do the whole process. If you like the idea of Safe Grad, an alcohol-free contained party to keep our kids safe, and you want to support it, you can go to the EHS Safe Grad Class of 2026 Facebook page. There is a link to a wish list because part of what we do is all sorts of raffles with things for the kids to win. It can be things for setting up your dorm. It can be things for kids who are going off to the military, kids who are going into the workforce. Everyone's covered. We've got all sorts of things, but there's wish lists, so you can help us out. It would be really good. So that's that. Other thing I work with is the Greater Hartford Gives Foundation. It's a associated, Enfield has its own little pocket of it. This organization gives money every year, and grants are made to nonprofits in town up to $5,000. We just opened a new grant cycle. If you are part of a nonprofit that has programming that addresses needs for citizenship, go to the website and look under the communities, find Enfield, and it'll link you to the RFP for grants. Please apply. Last year we did some really cool stuff with the grants. That made me think of if something that I'm involved with applies for a grant, I can't take part in the vote on in the decision on whether we approve or don't. I have to abstain from it. I have to recuse myself. It's an ethical thing. You all, everybody, have been elected to sit up there. You must vote unless you have a valid reason not to. That's my opinion. I don't know what the policy is. But if I voted for you and you are sitting up there abstaining left and right, even if your vote has no impact on the outcome of the 6-4, whatever, you owe it to the people who voted for you to make a statement with your vote, to stand for or against something. If you're not, you're wasting your voters who voted for you. You're insulting them, and you're wasting things. If you don't want to make a stand, if you don't want to vote, get off there, open your seat to somebody who will speak for the people who put you on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. So it is my understanding that there are 2 more folks signed up for public comment. However, I'm going to do a point of order on this one. So Mr. Kober and Mr. Anderson, you are at tonight's meeting as a Board of Ed member. This section of our agenda is reserved for public comment to address us as board members. To me, this blurs the lines of Board of Ed policy and bylaw 9005, specifically around dual representation, role distinction, and conflict of interest. So if there's something that you'd like to add to our agenda, there is a clear procedure for doing that. You're welcome to comment on anything in our agenda in your role up here as a board member. We can review our bylaws and leadership, and actually I'm a little disappointed that when we spoke today, you didn't mention that you had something that you wanted to share. So I'm going to do a point of order and ask that you rejoin us here at the dais.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to understand, because our bylaw 9210 has public comment, is there a specific class of public that's excluded from commenting?
We do. Go ahead, Mr. Macchio.
I did a quick search. And again, this is only a suggestion. And according to the Systems for Environment, I'm way out of my league on this one. I will send off a request to the attorney to get formal notification on it, to not restrict free speech in terms of their First Amendment protections. I would say if they do, if they are allowed to, they're held to the same restrictions as any other member of the public, which was, what did we have, a 4-minute? But I don't disagree with you because I sort of feel the same way. However, I also don't want to put us into a big legal, I don't know the answer for this one, and I apologize.
So I don't want us to get into any legal trouble. And for some reason, I'm feeling a little contentious because this was not something that I was aware that you were going to do. So I will let you speak as a public member tonight. And then in leadership, we will review our bylaws. If need, we can define what public comment is and do some work around that. But I will allow you to speak tonight for 4 minutes and hold you to the same standards as the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, honorable members of the Enfield Board of Education. My name is Philip Kober, a citizen, local resident, taxpayer, longtime listener, first-time speaker. During the last term and during the campaign trail, I heard a lot about transparency. I also heard a lot about the important work and dialogue that goes into the board subcommittees. I understand your subcommittees are considered public meetings with posted agendas. However, these meetings are not recorded nor televised. The agenda packets, which contain the bulk of information and materials discussed and acted upon, are not publicly posted despite the ease of uploading documents in 2026. Even the formal minutes, while posted, are never discussed or formally approved by those subcommittees themselves. Furthermore, these subcommittee sessions are usually held at 5 p.m. on a weekday at the BOE central office. This is a locked building that requires electronic badge entry and/or remote buzzer access. Unfortunately, by that time of the day, reception staff has usually left, leaving no one to let a person into your building. Without access to get inside, how will the public join these meetings? And if they do happen to make it inside, will they necessarily know where to go and find the correct room location? Considered in totality with the use of small conference rooms, no additional seating space, and no opportunity for public commenting reserved during the course of those meetings, how public do we really consider these subcommittee sessions? I will leave you all tonight with this quote: "The ability to ask questions is the greatest resource in learning the truth," by Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist and psychotherapist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kober. Mr. Anderson?
Good evening. Rob Anderson, citizen of Enfield. So this would be much easier if we had public comment. I mean, board member comments, it would be much easier. But you chose to restrict those, so we have no other outlet that doesn't require many steps of approval to get anything spoken about. So with that said, I'd like to correct something that I had said in a previous meeting. I had spoken about the amount of tax increases for homeowners based on the budget increase that we were asking for. The math that I used was based on something that was incorrect, and in fact, it was much higher than I thought. So that led me to how much is the referendum going to cost people? That got a little scary. So for just the referendum, not anything else, for somebody living in a $279,000 valued home with an assessment of $195,400, you're going to be seeing a tax increase of up to $480 within 5 years, just because of the referendum. If you're living in a house that's assessed at $182,000,
I'm just going to pause for a moment, and I'll pause your time. I just want us to be careful, because was my concern of, you're here as a public, but you are a board member and you're sharing information about some really important board business. So I just want to be careful.
this is public business.
I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I'm going to share at the end of your comments that there are ways that we could have had this discussion as board business, and you didn't need to come up as a public member. And I would encourage us to have this conversation as board members, because what you are sharing there as a public, I don't want it to be perceived as board communications. But go ahead. This is Rob Anderson's personal comments. I'll restart your time.
Thank you. Average home in Enfield is about $325,000 to $350,000 in value. That's the average home. So using that as a basis, that would mean that that home was assessed at $245,000. At that $245,000 assessment, the referendum is going to be $600 added to the taxes for that home. That does not include inflation. It does not include the revaluation that's going to hit next year. That's based on this year's numbers. That led me to how much are we paying in taxes for all of the school referendums. In 2033, based on this year's numbers, if the referendum passes this fall, we're going to be paying over $14 million just in referendums. Doesn't include the budget, doesn't include school security, doesn't include roads, doesn't include the town budget. That's just referendums that are for the school. So I think it would be wise.
Time's up. We're going to close public communications. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we move on in our business, I will be clear with the public. Board members are not restricted from adding agenda items. There are simple procedures for how agenda items could be added. I would also clarify that definitely Mr. Kober's comments could have been addressed during our leadership update, because we have discussed the issue that he raised around the access to our subcommittee meetings. And your comments, Mr. Anderson, could easily be discussed in multiple pre-ref meetings or our updates around that. So I would just share that that can be discussed as part of board business.
Just to chime in, sorry. I will, just so we can have complete clarification for all of the board members related to this, I will seek out the legal experts to find out exactly what the outcome was of this. I apologize. And first time I've come across this, so it's going to be a learning curve for me as well. But I'll get you an answer in terms of proper procedure related to this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In no way would I ever want to not encourage transparency or shared collaboration. So I'm sure there's a way that we can find a solution. And sharing information is the first step. Now we'll move on to item 7, unfinished business. And I'm going to look to Ms. McGuire-Bruce to make a motion regarding policy 5111 and 6111, which we are doing a second reading for tonight.
Yep, policy 6111 was presented at our last meeting for our first reading. As a reminder, this policy updates our graduation date requirements to align with changes in Connecticut state law, including allowing the board to set a firm graduation date no earlier than the 180th scheduled school day, and ensuring that this date does not shift due to school cancellations. At this time, I move that the board approve the second reading of policy 5111 and 6111.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. McGuire-Bruce, seconded by Ms. Gerard. Any discussion on these? Mr. Kober?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So our first reading on this was probably about exactly a month ago, given we didn't meet last month. I know this tied into something in the superintendent's update, the significant change with policy 5111, which is aids of attendance for students in our school, relates to the kindergarten waiver that he discussed. Of course, this being our second reading, the policy would be effective today. However, our kindergarten registration window already opened, and the district had set I believe it was like a 30-day window for the acceptance of the waivers for the fall of 2026 school year. So I'm a little dismayed we kind of retroactively did that before the policy changed. I hope we could have kept that window open a little longer in case there were just parents that were interested in applying for that waiver for this fall. However, nonetheless, I am in support of the language change in this policy as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
I would just like to
officially,
I would like to officially rebut a portion of that, which is we were required by the state to have a policy. At the time that the legislation came out, we were already in process. So in reality, we were moving forward. Then the state legislation changed. Now we're trying to catch up with the state legislation. So our process was out, was notified, was communicated. State legislation requires us to then create a policy. That's how come the time frame is the way it is.
Thank you.
We are going to come back together with this again at the beginning of next school year to remove any mention of said waiver because the legislation will again have changed. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macchio. I was about to say we're going to make another action on this next year. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mrs. McGuire-Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
4.
Ms. Broculio?
Yes.
Mrs. Cushman?
Yes.
Mrs. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. Gauss?
Yes.
Mrs. Kiner?
Yes.
Mr. Kober?
Yes.
Board Chair Pickett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Nice. And now, since we have updated policies, I'm going to look to Ms. McGuire-Bruce to talk about repealing policy 6111.1.
Yeah, so as discussed during our first reading, policy 6111.1 is now redundant due to the updates in 6111. So I move that the board repeal policy 6111.1.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. McGuire-Bruce, seconded by Ms. Kiner. Any discussion, Mr. Kober?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So obviously the revised 6111 kind of does render this obsolete. Previously, we had 2 different policies that talked about graduation, which is the topic of 6111. I know I previously, during the first reading, made some comments. I did hope that we still had some other stuff regarding the school calendar with, when school starts, when it ends, setting graduation at that 185th day, which these updates remove. So I would have liked to see a different version of 6111, but of course 6111.1 is now moot, so I do understand that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. McGuire-Bruce?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
4.
Ms. Broculio?
Yes.
Mrs. Cushman?
Yes.
Mrs. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. Gauss?
Yes.
Mrs. Kiner?
Yes.
Mr. Kober?
No.
Board Chair Pickett?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1-0.
Sorry, keep track here, Phil. You made me change I was overzealous. All right, thank you. So we will have those new policies and repeal that policy since that was our second reading tonight. Moving on to new business and our consent agenda. In our packet was our meeting minutes for March 24th and April 8th, our accounts payroll for March. And what wasn't included in our packet, but since it is part of the consent agenda, I do want to just share, as a full board, we did receive invitations to the Lions Pancake Breakfast on May 2nd, the Parent Leadership Academy Class 19 graduation on May 14th, and the Adult Education graduation on June 4th. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Kiner, seconded by Mr. Kober. This is a hand vote. All in favor of the consent agenda? That looks like 9 in favor, none against. Thank you. And on to committee reports. We're going to start with Ms. Kiner for her curriculum update.
Okay. As the Curriculum Committee continuously works to improve programs across the district, we believe it is important that advanced learners receive the same careful attention as students requiring intervention and support. As most of you know, JFK is extremely fortunate to have been the recipient of a generous endowment from the estate of Abe and Eve Simkovitz since 2012. The Curriculum Committee is in the process of gathering data and information, being intentional and making improvements in the implementation of a quality program that will benefit all students who are identified as talented and gifted. At our February curriculum meeting, the JFK Middle School TAG teacher, Mr. Brian Zawodniak, gave our committee an overview of the TAG program as a first step of working together to expand, clarify, and improve the program to make it more accessible for students to participate and thrive. I provided a detailed update of this meeting at our March 10th Board of Ed meeting. As a result of that initial meeting, the committee has tasked Mr. Zawodniak, Ms. Brown, and Ms. Middleton with answering a list of questions and bringing some data to share at our April meeting. That meeting will be held tomorrow, April 29th, and it is going to be at Alcorn, room 213 at 5 p.m. We will continue to work toward reimagining the best TAG program possible. Please understand that this is an ongoing discussion whose benefits will take time to bring to fruition. I will keep you posted of our progress. Our curriculum meetings are open to the public. I encourage you to attend. The meeting dates, agendas, and minutes are posted online on the town's website. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kiner. Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead,
I
Mr.
normally
Macchio.
don't. I normally don't speak during the committee reports, but I just needed to notify the board that I found out literally just before this meeting that JFK's track team has a meet tomorrow. So Mr. Zawodniak will not be able to attend, but Ms. Middleton's aware, and we're still going to move forward with the agenda and discussion as planned.
Thank you, Mr. Macchio.
I didn't want you to be surprised when you come tomorrow. Yeah.
So thank you for that update. Thank you, Ms. Kiner, for highlighting the joint work of reimagining TAG and the continued conversation that this has been happening. I would say that this TAG conversation actually spans to like last term, where we had like started looking at the policy and at the will and the endowment. So I look forward to continued updates on that. Mr. Kober.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment and then a question for the Curriculum Committee. Also, to echo your statements regarding the TAG program, I know there's been a lot of discourse on that. So I'm looking forward to a recommendation from the committee that will eventually come to the board. And obviously, we've talked that it spans several committees between policy and finance and stuff like that. I did have a question to the Policy Committee Chair, something I had thought of, and I believe I had reached out to the board chair about this. In the past year, have we approved any textbook changes through the Policy Committee? I know there's some statute, through the Curriculum Committee, state statute, Connecticut 10229, requiring like board action on any textbook changes. And I know in our budget for this year, we appropriated, I believe, $101,000 for textbooks. So since we're coming towards the end of the FY, if we haven't approved any textbook changes for this year, are there any in the pipeline that we're going to see before the end of the year?
Mr. Kober, I will just quickly jump in. We have, and I'm just thinking of historically of curriculum meetings, have looked at our course descriptions and course textbooks. I believe, per our definition in our bylaws, the curriculum subcommittee is the one who approves those textbooks. So I'm not exactly sure what you're hoping to see or if the full board needs to approve that, but we can discuss that in leadership.
Correct. Yeah, we can follow up on that. I believe the wording in our policy is the curriculum is empowered to review and recommend textbooks. And then again, per the state law, it's supposed to be the full board action on that. So
we'll review.
Follow up on that.
Yep. Any other? Thank you. Finance.
All right. The Finance Committee met on April 6th and reviewed accounts, payroll, and overall budget status. Mrs. Cernos presented the March certification of expenditures, noting that in that month it included 2 payroll cycles, which resulted in higher personnel costs and corresponding impacts to grant and Head Start accounts. She also reported that the majority of the magnet school tuition invoices have been paid, with the remaining obligations to that now complete. A comprehensive review of the FY 2026 budget status was provided. The committee also reviewed the talented and gifted TAG investment account. Mrs. Cernos presented the monthly MML investment account statement, including changes in value due to investment income, expenses, and withdrawals. There was also a conversation noted that recent declines was reflecting of the broader economic conditions. Importantly, the TAG account is reviewed monthly as part of the Finance Committee process, including both the investment account and the associated revenue and expenditures. And finally, updates were provided on a student activity and district activity accounts. These accounts are managed by the district, but not owned by the Board of Education. And we did ask an additional detail on miscellaneous accounts will be provided at the next meeting. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for May 4th at 5 p.m. I will remind the public that these meetings are held at Alcorn. And just so you know, there is a doorbell that will alert the superintendent when you arrive. And I am sure that we would have no problem moving to a larger conference room if there was a need for additional seating.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Bruce, I appreciate you sharing the regular oversight of this committee. It is a procedural piece, but really important information that is reviewed. And I know that conversation around TAG has been included, so I think it's important to note to the public that we do review those accounts monthly. I would also just share as a quick update to the Finance Committee. Steve and I presented, he mentioned this in his update, to the Town Council ahead of the public hearing. The Town Council is doing their deliberations from now until May 18th. So our hope is to continue advocating for our schools. Policy.
At our last policy committee meeting, we reviewed some construction-related policies from several neighboring districts. After discussion, the committee decided not to move forward with adopting similar policies in Enfield at this time. However, we briefly discussed collaborating with the town council on any naming conventions as needed. We also made a commitment to improve access to information from our policies about special education for children ages 3 to 5. Our goal is to ensure this information is more easily accessible to parents and guardians on the district website, and we appreciate your patience as we work to make these updates and strengthen access for families. In addition, the committee reviewed several policies within the 1000 series. These will be brought forward to the board for a first read, I believe, at our next meeting, including updates related to green cleaning and pesticide use. And our next policy meeting is May 19th at Alcorn at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Perculio. And leadership. So there was a joint leadership meeting that was scheduled for last week. It did get rescheduled because of conflicts actually on us on the board side. My guess is a rescheduling of that once they get further along in their budget deliberations makes more sense anyways. We did meet as Board of Ed leadership on April 1st. We reviewed our upcoming agendas and priorities for these April Board of Ed meetings to ensure that we're prepared and aligned. That's also the opportunity for adding agenda items. A significant portion of our discussion during this leadership meeting was focused on FOIA processes. While we do not have a separate board policy, we do follow state law closely. We reviewed required timelines for acknowledging requests, expectations for fulfilling them, and the impact on staff time and resources. We also discussed clarity around document availability and any associated costs to ensure our practices remain consistent, transparent, and compliant. We also reviewed considerations related to safety protocols. In addition, we discussed upcoming hiring needs and the interview schedule, including timelines and next steps. Finally, we discussed board reporting practices, and we will be sharing more information publicly in an upcoming May meeting around that. You've heard a little bit about those June presentations and things like that. This work in leadership reflects our continued focus on transparency, preparation, and effective governance in support of our schools and community. Upcoming leadership meetings will include conversations around our new security protocols, our superintendent's evaluation and goals ahead as a board, our board guests and presentations, and any information that our board members feel pertinent to speak up at the dais about. Go ahead, Mr. Kober.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think you did a great job highlighting the April meeting. Unfortunately, I too wasn't able to attend the joint leadership meeting with the town, thus requiring it to be rescheduled. As Board Chair mentioned, I think the FOIA topic regarding protocols was kind of an important part of that conversation. Prior to our bylaw changes, we did have a specific bylaw that referred to records access and kind of set some parameters on that. Since that's been repealed, as mentioned, we don't have district or board level guidance. We're now kind of going strictly off state law. But I think with some requests that have come in, I think that's an important thing to look at and possibly consider future referrals, either continued conversations in leadership or to the policy committee regarding how FOIA is handled and any other district requirements that we want to set on that. I also think it was important, whether it was in leadership or in a previous conversation, I know a member of the public mentioned kind of posting agenda packets, and I remember it was indicated that we are not changing our current practice in leadership, and I just want to voice that I would be supportive of changing that practice and continuing that conversation as well.
Phil, you didn't need to be a public member. You could have added it right here. Thank you. I appreciate those additions. Our next Board of Ed leadership meeting is on Wednesday, May 6th. Liaison reports. Let's start with school updates. Go ahead, Ms. Gerard.
All right, so I was lucky enough to attend the assembly for April for Parkman, and I want to thank the school and the staff and everybody for their focus on Autism Awareness Month. It was great to see the gym filled with blue shirts and the kids speaking about autism, what it is and what it means for them. It was a really great feeling, and I actually had my daughter there with me, so it was a great experience for her as well. Enfield's 5th grade dance is being held on May 29th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Enfield Youth Center. Please be sure to sign up. This is your drop-off event. Parents do not have to stay for this one, which is awesome. But please make sure that you actually sign up for the event. Literacy Night is on Thursday, April 30th at 6 p.m. to 7:45. There will be a book sale, games, and much more. PTO, Not Your Mother or Not Your Grandma's Bingo Night is on May 1st at 6 p.m. at American Legion. This has helped to raise money for the 5th grade committee so that we can have a really great send-off for those 5th graders. No tears, okay? PTO meeting is on May 12th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Please check your Parent Square or email for all the updates. Lastly, about Kite's Enfield Unplugged week is coming up May 4th to May 8th. There are some really great events happening that week, so please make sure that you check your Parent Square because it has been sent out there, and also the Kite page for more information and the full schedule of events. Their next meeting is May 6th at 5:30 p.m. at Asnuntuck.
Thank you, Ms. Gerard. I'll go Ms. Bercouli. I'll go down the line this way, and then if you gentlemen and Ms. Cushman are available afterwards.
On behalf of ECAC, the Cultural Arts Commission, I wanted to share that the Enfield Community Chorus will host a Stars, Stripes, and Song concert on May 2nd at 3 p.m. in the Enfield High School Auditorium, and the Opera House Players will perform Merrily We Roll Along Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from May 1st to May 17th. As far as Henry Barnard, I wanted to share that there is a free after-school enrichment activity called Groove and Grow with Miss Renee from 3:15 to 4 p.m. for grades K through 2 on May 4th or May 11th. You can find information for registering on that on Parent Square.
Thank you. Ms. Kiner?
From Andrew Dupere, Prudence Crandall. Students in the Prudence Crandall Best Buddies program recently participated in the statewide Best Buddies Walk at the Yard Goat Stadium. The event included a variety of activities for everyone to enjoy. Thank you to our staff, Mrs. Tulloch, Mrs. Benyak, Mrs. Spalding, Ms. Johansson, Mrs. Capotcasa, Mr. Roche, Ms. Tehran, and Ms. Rosienski for supporting our Crandall students and helping make this a meaningful experience. And I apologize if I didn't pronounce your names correctly. The Grade 5 Next Generation Science Standards Assessment began today. We are confident that our students are well prepared and ready to do their best. You can help support them by ensuring they get a good night's sleep and eat a hearty breakfast in the morning. The assessment will begin promptly at 9:15 a.m. Please note that the students who arrive late may not be able to test during the scheduled session. And finally, from Mr. Dupere, progress reports will be issued on Thursday, April 30th. If you do not receive the email, please contact the office.
Thank you, Ms. Kiner. Ms. McGuire-Bruce?
All right. Enfield Street School will be hosting a science and learning night tomorrow from 5 to 6:30. This is an opportunity to learn more about what happens in our students' big, beautiful brains. This is partnered with a book fair and ice cream as well. Mr. Lord and Ms. Snow have shared information about this event in the Gazette, and they actually reached out today. They're still looking for scoopers for ice cream, so feel free to volunteer. I am looking forward to attending tomorrow. The PTO is also hosting a Red Robin fundraiser on May 14th. You can participate by dining in or ordering takeout. Nice way to take advantage of someone else cooking during spring sports season. They also encourage families of incoming students to find and follow Enfield Street School PTO on Facebook to stay up to date on the events and activities. Lastly, my kids and I had the pleasure of attending the art festival last weekend, also on Friday evening. We saw so many creative pieces from the Enfield Street Bees, including alphabet soup projects, self-portraits. But a highlight for my kiddos was getting to try the pottery wheel with the guidance from the high school students. It was a wonderful hands-on experience, and they are already looking forward to being old enough to attend clay camp someday. So a special thank you to the arts and music departments for all of their hard work. Events like this take an incredible amount of energy, and it truly showed on Friday night. So thank you very much, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week next week, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire-Bruce. Mr. Kober?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a quick update specifically for the high school, but it also involves JFK students. Tomorrow, Wednesday the 29th, basically it's a career fair. It's officially called the Tech and Trades Night that will take place. Begins at 5:30 p.m. With a panel discussion in the auditorium. There'll be certain career representatives setting up in the cafeteria to talk during that time. The panel will be in the auditorium, and then from 5:50 to 7 p.m. Will be the actual fair where students and parents can talk with reps from various career fields, including the military, first responders, and various other techs and trades. So if anyone's available tomorrow night, definitely hope we get a good audience. I know we've had some conversations with the Career Center. This is being put on through our counseling coordinator at the high school, and going forward, I hope we continue events like this and run them more regularly.
Mr. Gauss?
Okay, I don't have anything specifically from JFK, but I do have a couple things that cover kids in that age range and younger. There's some sign-ups for some summer camps, 2026 cooking camp, and Eagles basketball summer camp. All of that is in Parrott Square. And I actually kind of have a question, and not really like a challenging question, but I'd just like to know if Mr. Macchio can share a little overview of the new parent access system, just to give people an idea of what to expect when they get to the schools.
Thanks, Mr. Gauss. I'm going to interject on that. We did a brief overview at our last meeting. We do have as an agenda item for our leadership meeting in May to have some additional conversation about that. I would also share in Parent Square, there's lots of information that's been shared, unless there's a quick update that you want to give, Mr. Macchio.
Yeah, I'm not looking for huge, just like when you walk in, have your license, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think you just said it right there. When you walk into the school buildings, if you're going to be in for a prolonged period of time, I think that's a big key, right? If you're just going in to drop something off and then leaving again, they're not going to make you go through the process. But if you're staying for a prolonged period of time, they are going to ask for your state-issued ID, your driver's license, something of that nature. If for some reason you don't have one, or you don't have it, and they know who you are, they can manually enter all the information into the computer. So no reason to fret. The secretary can, at the desk, will be able to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gauss. And if there's additional information that you'd like about it, let Mr. Kober know, because I do think there's, perfect, thank you. Ms. Cushman?
In the most recent Eli Whitney newsletter, Mrs. Flanagan shared numerous photos highlighting some fun learning activities around the school. such as the Math Egg Hunt, an Italy excursion, Titanic travels, the 5th grade Arbor Day celebration, and a Revolutionary War presentation. There is also great detail in the newsletter about upcoming events, such as information about the 5th grade dance and fun night, ordering lawn signs for the 5th graders moving up, why and how to submit baby photos, and a special Enfield Community Chorus event, as was already mentioned, the Stars, Stripes, and Songs.
Thank you, Ms. Cushman. Ms. Kiner, did you have another comment?
I do. I have another very short committee, Head Start Policy Committee report. So on the 9th of April, the meeting was held, and the following information was shared. The current enrollment is 102. The attendance has been 86%, which is really good. There was one vacancy, one student dropped out, and then another one enrolled. For the meals that they served that month was breakfast, 1,752, lunch, 1,765, and snacks, 1,380. The policy committee also has a hiring committee that came together to interview a candidate to replace one of their Head Start teachers who is retiring. And finally, there was a preparation for the self-assessment plan that was discussed and voted on. And that's it for them.
Thank you, Ms. Kiner.
You're welcome.
All right, I will close us out. This morning, we celebrated.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. No, I'm closing us out with school updates. No worries. Closing us out with school updates. No, we still got more. Almost.
I mean, I'm ready to go home, but also we still got work to do.
Okay. This morning, we celebrated Bus Appreciation Day, thanking the drivers at JFK, but I know some of our schools and our PTOs also celebrated our bus drivers. It takes a village to support schools, and bus drivers are an important piece. We've mentioned the Art Festival. I also want to thank our community partners, because I know that is an event that is put on by, I think, the Enfield Women's Club and other partnership groups. So I think that's another great example of how Enfield comes together as a community to support students and the arts. I would also share that JFK has Shrek Jr. this weekend. Tickets are available to purchase online. That should be a great show and play as well. And then for our Hazardville Memorial School, on the 29th, Field Day parent volunteer signups will begin. There's a PTO fundraiser at Red Robin on the 30th. There's a PTO meeting on the May 6th, and Field Day is scheduled for May 29th. I will end the school update section of our agenda thanking our teachers and our staff with upcoming Staff Appreciation Week. I remember the love we felt as board members. I hope they all feel that same amount of love and more next week and every day. Continuing with updates, joint facilities.
So for joint facilities, sorry, I'm going to do this one because you get the next one. April's meeting was canceled. Next meeting is May 14th at 6 p.m.
Perfect. And what I was going to add here, Mr. Kober, sorry, before you chime in, is there has been a shift. Town Council redid joint facilities resolution and has adjusted the focus of that subcommittee. We have had some joint leadership conversations and our own caucus conversations around the importance of saying in the know, and part of the group, whoever speaks around our school facilities, which seems to be happening in the DPW subcommittee. So Mr. Macchio and Kelsey, I hope I described this okay. At this point, we do not have official membership on DPW subcommittee, but Mr. Daig has been invited to those meetings to get updates around school, and Ms. McGuire-Bruce has been attending as a Board of Ed liaison. I have been having joint conversations with leadership, and maybe for our next upcoming joint leadership meeting, we talk with the town about adjusting that resolution and membership to the DPW subcommittee. Mr. Kober, you got some more for me?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you actually did a great job kind of describing that. And I do want to echo, and I know when Town Council made the change in February, we did talk about it. I believe Mrs. Gerard kind of had mentioned it at our following meeting, the subsequent meeting, but the charge of the Joint Facilities Committee was changed by the council, where its purview is now essentially enforcing or overseeing the school roof referendum. So I think the nomenclature of Joint Facilities Committee is kind of misleading. It no longer has purview or oversight on joint facilities. It's strictly on the roof referendum. And then to your point, and as we said, a lot of the work, whether it's cleaning and maintenance and light bulbs and plowing and fields and all that stuff now seems to be handled either through a different town council committee and or the DPW oversight. So I think it's important that we as a board, ensure we have representation there to kind of bring up our concerns and questions and stuff like that. So again, to the town council people watching this, perhaps consider renaming that committee, just again for public awareness, because calling it joint facilities when it no longer oversees facilities just seems a little misleading to me. So thank you.
I just want to clarify something. It is not just the school roofs, it's all of the roofs. So it's the full rooferendum. So that's why, it's town and school, just so you know. Just to clarify, that's all.
No, thank you for that clarification, because correct, that rooferendum did include other buildings as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kober. Thank you, Ms. Gerard. Joint insurance. I'm shutting.
I'm going to refer to you.
Perfect. I don't think that has been scheduled. I will say insurance is still one of those, I don't want to say volatile line items, but a variable budget line item. So I know that Mr. Macchio is continuously looking for updates on that, and possibly once budget season has come to more of an end, we schedule that meeting.
Right, while the joint group has not met, I continue to have conversation and discussion with no, not Matt. Seth Levine from Lockton to give us updates related to how our monthly percentages are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Macchio. Joint security, Ms. Kiner.
The joint security meeting was canceled for April, and the next meeting is scheduled for May 8th in the Skidco Room at Town Hall at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you, Ms. Kiner. And
Yeah, so I know last month we had a good update regarding the committee. The last meeting was canceled. I hope that we have the next joint security. I know there's some questions and some potential changes that they were looking at implementing that they talked about at that last meeting. So just to get follow up with that, I think it's important that that committee meet regarding like traffic safety. We did talk about visitor management and then some other stuff. So hopefully that meeting doesn't get canceled. If it does, I think I'm going to, as a sitting member of that, and maybe with Ms. Kiner, we'll just get some RFIs up to the people in that committee just so we make sure we don't lose that. Again, as you said, being in the know, I think that's very important, especially with joint security when we're talking about different initiatives, stuff like that.
Thank you, Mr. Kober, for that. I would also share, if you do have outstanding things that you would like, please feel free to include me, or please include me in that communication. That can also be something I'm going to add to our joint leadership conversation. Pre-ref, Ms. Gerard.
All right, so since our last meeting, both the Town Council and the Board of Education have approved the educational specifications with bipartisan support. For more details, please visit the district website, where you'll find additional information and a list of frequently asked questions about the project. There is also plenty of information and the slides, the presentations that have been done, meeting minutes, all different things like that, and the videos that you can actually go ahead and view. One important point for residents to keep in mind is that any tax increase would not begin until 2028 or until construction begins. We also recognize that at times, misinformation about the project may circulate. It's important that the information shared is accurate, clear, and accessible to everyone. The committee, along with many others, have dedicated significant time and effort to thoroughly evaluate all options and ensure a thoughtful, well-informed proposal. As has been noted in previous meetings, it would cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and I mean that, to simply repair our current schools. This is basic needs to bring our schools up to code and in proper working order. This project presents an opportunity not only to improve our school facilities, but also to strengthen our community as a whole. We understand that a large amount of information has been shared over the past year, but it's essential that everyone takes the time to make an informed decision ahead of the November vote. Some residents have raised additional questions and concerns about the proposed project, And we strongly encourage you to submit those by email to preref@enfieldschools.org. It's also important that you are welcome to email any of the Board of Education members. You can email honestly any of us and ask those questions. If they're not answered or sent over to pre-ref, you can reach out to the committee members, myself, Dean Gauss, and Ms. Cushman, and we can help you out with that. The next meeting is tomorrow, April 29th at 6 p.m. right here in Council Chambers.
Thank you, Ms. Gerard. Thank you for sharing the Board of Ed public information and factual place to access those documents. That's important. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kober, seconded by Ms. Gerard. Any discussion? Hand vote. All in favor? 9 in favor, none against.